Welcome, everybody, to episode number 6 of Boba Talk, a brand new Learn to Code podcast that demystifies everything you want to know about the coding journey. Today, we have a special guest, Juan Pa, the program manager at GitHub Education. This episode is a celebration of the Codédex and GitHub partnership that officially launched last week, and Juan played a pivotal role in this. We brain jammed about GitHub Student Developer Pack, hackathons, AI, and also asked some questions from the Codédex community. Welcome, Juan. What are you drinking today?
I'm having some boba. I think this is called like the golden milk boba here. It's from Subtle Bubble Tea here in Seattle. So pretty good. Pretty excited about having Codédex joining the Student Developer Pack. I see a lot of hype and I'm really excited to see how people do. I love that you say that I'm a keystone, but I'm essentially just a person that writes email between two people.
I don't know about that. And before we kick this off, I do want to give a shout out to Brew Memories, working from home today. And Brew Memories is a local boba shop here in Park Slope, Brooklyn. Cool. Juan, so you were in Illinois, before we dive into the origin story, so you were in Illinois last week for a hackathon, correct?
That's correct. So every year there's like HackIllinois, one of the kind of like not biggest, but one of those hackathons that we really enjoy being around. And normally we have supported for like 2 or 3 years now. And this is the first time that I actually get to go in person to the hackathon, especially like, after like the pandemic and people getting back into in-person events and everything. I wanted to learn more about like the vibes and the energy on hackathons right now, trying to find out like, are they fully recovered? Are they still getting there? I was very surprised that like hackathon culture is back. I feel like people are super energetic. Students are kind of like super interested in learning more and building crazy projects during a weekend.
Right.
And I kind of felt like nature is healing right now.
Nice. Well, hopefully, it has been 2 years, so hopefully we're back. And we can dive into the hackathon stuff in a bit, but I'm sure all the listeners, all the learners at Codédex would like to know a little bit more about you and also GitHub Education. So would you like to just give a quick origin story about how Juan got to GitHub and Microsoft?
It's interesting because I found that many people have like a similar story aside. So for me, I started to get interested in coding because of video games. And not for the right reasons though. I was playing, I'm going to age myself, but I was playing RuneScape before.
Of course, RuneScape.
It's kind of like, very old-fashioned game, 3D, kind of like the start of like 3D kind of like graphics, I feel, right? And I really like kind of like the whole game, but I didn't have enough time to like play it, or I would go to school and I wanted like my thing to like continue playing. And I learned kind of like how to like read the computer input, kind of like the computer screen. And this is with Java, so not probably the most fancy like programming language. And I coded like a Java thing to get like resources for me while I was out. And it kind of like would leave it running. And probably if you remember like the game, there was like a genie that came out like every kind of like hour and a half. And it would be like, just checking out that you're not a bot. And I can like coding like everything in order to avoid the bot to get like stopped by kind of like the genie and everything. And it worked well. I think it was kind of like my first introduction. It was like super cool to build something on top of a video game. And then I kind of continued kind of like playing other games. MapleStory was kind of like a good game for me. And I didn't hack that one in a specific, or I didn't kind of like build anything on top of it because of how complex like their security system was. Like they had a formal security system to avoid you from like collecting data from the game or modifying stuff. But I tried and I failed, and it's okay. And then I think like, through the years, I got really interested in continuing kind of like coding. For me, I think a kind of like very important moment was a teacher that gave me like my first like Java book. And this is when like probably like getting books, like you would learn about how to code like with books and stuff. And for me, it was like a great first experience of, like there's much more that I can do than just like these simple like scripts that I was building, right? And there was a little bit more of like, what could I explore? That was kind of like on high school. And then on high school, I also started like to learn how to code like Python and other programming languages. And I had like a teacher that was super nice.
Where was this, by the way?
Oh, this was back in, like, I was born and raised in Mexico City. Mexico City, I think, is very unique in the way that kind of like people end up like coding. I think most of the students, most of the learners of like coding, especially kind of like that go through the traditional route and kind of like get their first experience during like high school. And from there, they take it from there. But yeah, so I ended up being like, hey, this like coding thing is really cool. And I started building like super small things and it was fun. And then at high school, I went to my first hackathon, which was a government organized hackathon called HackCDMX.
Okay.
It was a lot of fun. Like I came with this idea of like, I know how to code already because I was like using Java Swift library, the one to build kind of like UIs and stuff. And I was like, hey, I can do like a credit card validator. So I'm like a super coder. And then I get to the hackathon and people are just like, dude, like Java sucks. You should learn like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to get started. And it was a very humbling experience of like really building a thing from scratch instead of kind of like a smaller project. And it worked out. It went pretty good. We won the hackathon. And I think it was like very lucky though. Like the team was good. The idea was good. It was my first hackathon. I had no idea of what I'm doing. And I think when you go to your first hackathon, you're just there because like people tell you that it's a cool thing or you want to build something. For me, I was a student. So I was like, hey, free food for a weekend. Like, hell yeah, let's do it. And I was very surprised with the result. Like I had a lot of fun and I just became addicted to hackathons afterwards. So
really,
I went to as many kind of like hackathons and meetups that I could afterwards. Yeah, there was a big start of like developer communities in the country. And like it was when GDGs were kind of like starting, kind of like the Google developer groups, and Mozilla had like a good presence.
What years are we talking about? What era? Like 5 years ago?
The start of my degree. So I love that you say that it was 5 years ago, but high school has been so far away.
Oh, this is high school. Okay, I thought you were talking about getting to college. Okay, my bad. So this is like 10 years ago?
Yeah, so kind of like, let's say 10 years ago.
Cool, right. I forgot the RuneScape bit.
But in essence, I started to go to all of the hackathons and start to meet like a really cool like people in the industry. I was like very kind of like, it was very energizing to go to events and see like people talk about like these programming languages and being very nerdy about stuff. And I really felt like I belonged in those spaces. Like I really started to join because I loved organizing stuff. Like I always wanted to, I was always very good with making sure that, food was there in time. Or if anyone needed like extra hands for the hackathon, I could jump in. So I went to a ton of hackathons. I met like a friend, and then a friend of a friend is John Gottfried and Swift from MLH.
Okay.
And they were like, hey, we want to organize like hackathons in Mexico. And I was like, that sounds fun. At the beginning, it was like us being like, hey, why aren't there any student hackathons in the country?
Right.
And we started to see like everything that was happening in the US. And I think MHacks was like a massive hackathon at the time. They had like 2,000 people attending the hackathon. And this was a very weird time where hackathon organizers were looking for size. Like they were like, who organized the largest hackathon? We have moved from there though. Now I think it's much more on quality, not like quantity of like attendees. So I met like John and Swift through like this person, Emi Morato, who I give a huge shout out because he introduced us. And we started to work on MX Hacks, which was the first student hackathon in the country. From there, like we organized the first hackathon. My hackathon was cursed, and we can talk more about it later. But
okay. By the way, what year was that?
I think this was for my first year in college.
Okay.
Like I graduated from high school. I go to college to UNAM, which is one of the largest public universities in the country. And from there, I started to organize hackathons, and we had like a really good, fun experience with the first one. Then all the other students were like, yeah, I want to do this at my school. And then I would be like, yeah, let's partner and talk together and see what we can do. And talking with MLH, with Swift, it was like, hey, let's have like the Mexican League of Hackathons. Fun fact is MLH as well. So we started to organize that. It went pretty good. It was a lot of fun. I got to organize, I think, like 20 or support like 20 hackathons for that. And MLH started to grow in Europe and kind of like in Mexico at the same time. So I was like leading Mexico, and then there was a couple of other folks in Europe doing their thing. As Team Fogarty was kind of like the lead of the Hackathon League in Europe. And through MLH, I met a few folks. One of them was like Jonash, who ended up working later at GitHub. So I was there for MLH for a few years, and then decided that I wanted to finish college because, like, traveling every weekend for hackathons and studying was like a little bit rough.
Right.
So, and also I was like mentoring hackathon organizers. So it was like a lot of work. I went back to college to finish kind of like my studies. And then I started to do research. Like I was very lucky that one of the hackathon organizers that I supported was doing research in Stanford in kind of like crowdsourcing. So I kind of got involved there. And then I got involved in like a research paper with West Virginia University. And then I ended up doing some fun like projects with Carnegie Mellon for a summer internship on right after Amazon acquires Twitch.
Right.
I felt like Twitch didn't really understand their audience. And Amazon was like, we bought this thing and we don't know how to make it work.
Right.
So a lot of the things why we got involved in that project was kind of like helping Amazon understand kind of like their audience and kind of like experimenting. So this lab in specific was doing audience participation games, which is kind of like games where the audience is able to participate through chat. So probably you've seen like Twitch Plays Pokemon is kind of like the best example of this.
Classic.
And it's really interesting because you can understand like human interaction through kind of like understanding how people were like in favor of like making sure that they won the game, and there was like another group that was like against the game, trying to mess up with the people that wanted to win the game. So it was a very interesting research. And I ended up doing audience participation kind of like research on how do like audiences evolve through Twitch and what are the different interactions that the streamers and chat or kind of like their audience have as they grow. And I really liked it. I think it was a fun project to be around. And while I was doing this research at CMU, Joe Nash calls me and he's like, hey, I'm at GitHub now. Would you be interested in kind of like being a campus expert? And I was like,
yeah,
I love GitHub. I think it's fun. I'm not super technical though. I'm up for it. And I joined the program as part of like the first batch of campus experts once I got back to Mexico. So yeah, it was a fun, it's a very kind of like big story of like, I think without going to developer community events and really, I wouldn't say like networking, but like meeting people, like generally wanted to talk with people and nerd about stuff. I was able to kind of like start kind of like finding people that were doing really cool things as developers. So they were doing like cool projects or working on great companies. And at the end of that, I think like I organized my last hackathon, the MX Hacks, like in 2017, 2018, I think. It was so cool. It was the first hackathon that we had, for example, sign language interpretation, like live sign language interpretation. And we invited like
for announcements or just like for workshops, everything?
For everything. So we made like a partnership with a university that had deaf students. We were like, they felt really left out because they could not go to hackathons because they needed someone there to help them out and kind of like they integrating them and kind of like making all the work that requires kind of like all of the accessibility work. It was so cool to have that. I think I think what I learned from that is like, is these very small details that kind of like have a big impact. And the students were like super hyped of being able to attend. They won, I think, like second place. And it was an interesting conversation with like the big companies were there, right? Like Microsoft and kind of like these big tech. And then being like, hey, your courses are not accessible to like deaf students. And they, like the slight panic of like, this is something we should be aware of. So I kind of like stopped like organizing hackathons, and then I started my own company. But a few months afterwards, after I started, I got a call from GitHub, and they were like, this is like post Microsoft acquisition, and I had like finished my time as a campus expert. And then they were like, hey, would you be interested on contracting for GitHub as kind of like program manager or something? I was like, yeah, sure. Like, let's do it. I think it was my dream job.
Of course, it sounds like it. Everything sounds like it led up to that point.
I think for me, it was like, I was very, very scared. And I think there was a lot of imposter syndrome of like, am I the right person for this job? Because it sounds like, when it's so good that you're like, I don't know if I'm ready for it. Like, I joined GitHub afterwards as a contractor. And then 2 years ago, this was like 4 years ago, three years ago. And then 2 years ago, I moved to Seattle as a full-time employee for GitHub. Yeah.
By the way, huge congrats. That's it sounds like you were meant for this. Like everything you said from, high school to college, it sounds like you were meant for this. Even hearing that you go to Illinois this weekend, right? Going to Stanford's hackathon. So I feel like you're definitely very involved still to this day. So huge congrats. I wrote down so many notes on what you said. There's so many things I want to touch on. I should have cut you off. First of all, RuneScape. Whoa.
Yeah.
Dude, I haven't talked about RuneScape with anybody in so long. And it was like when you talk about RuneScape, playing RuneScape in the library, that was such a nostalgic moment for me. That was that made me tear up a little bit inside. That game was my first multiplayer online game that I was completely hooked on. I think you can probably even see bits and pieces of Codédex, influenced by things like RuneScape, right? Like the online community and things like that. What was your username, by the way? Do you remember?
I have absolute no idea. Okay. It's been so long.
I still remember mine. Mine was Vinfy, Vinfy. I thought that was so cool. And it was an all red. I think a few years ago, I logged back on. And RuneScape, they tell you how many days it has been since you logged back on. And it was over 1,500 days or something crazy. It was crazy. Yeah. Huge reason why, I got into more online video games too for me.
Yeah. I think a lot of the developers that I know, a lot of them learned how to code because of game design.
Right.
I think when you see a video game and how much first of all, it's a lot of work, doing a video game, right?
Of course.
I think it's one of the most complex pieces of software you can build. It's not only the code and make it something functional, but it's the design, it's the story, is the engagement, right? And I heard both stories from people who get inspired from video games to start coding and people who want to crack down a game and can find easier ways of doing the stuff that get them involved into the game as well. I don't know if you remember FarmVille.
FarmVille on Facebook?
Yeah, FarmVille was a big thing as well, right? I also built automations for FarmVille so that I could just farm automatically and leave. So I think it was much more about trying to make my life simple that I learned how to code.
Right. By the way, nowadays when I talk to Gen Zs, it's Minecraft. That's what it's the newer version of RuneScape essentially. And by the way, while you're talking about Mexico City startup, I looked up our Plausible, our Google Analytics. I think we have 16,000 learners from Mexico City. That region.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so I think it's still pretty strong, going pretty strong.
That's really interesting. I think one of the biggest challenges that I found from studying in Mexico is the language barrier. One of the things that makes a strong difference between very good developers and good developers in the country is the ability of reading and speaking in English. Just because if you don't know the language, you need to wait for the translation, right?
Right.
And it's a thing that a lot of people have pushed where the most important class that you can take as a developer in Mexico
is English.
Was English classes. Is the one class that can boost your income extensively.
Of course. Yeah. Okay, so here this is a little sidetrack, but people have requested Spanish translation for Codédex countless times in the last year. What are your thoughts on that? This is something we should...
I'm opinionated. This is from some feedback, and I asked the same for GitHub because GitHub is mainly in English, and now we have a little bit of translation to multiple languages. What I talked with Rachel Lee neighbors, who I met here in Seattle through Twitter, they wrote the React docs. They were telling me about one of the biggest complexities that you'll have is maintaining a different language and supporting. You not only can translate the game, but you also the courses, but also the support, social media, and then the community aspect, and then you have moderation if you have a Discord server, and things. It's opening up Pandora's box of extra work you have to do, right? What Rachel recommended me at the time is to try to write the courses or the learning resources in a way that is easy for a machine to translate, so that you're not the one maintaining the code, but that people that access the website can use these browser tools for translating to multiple languages and get the best translation possible of the courses. So that you're focused on, and the good thing is that if you make a good learning resource in one language, in English, and you optimize for machine translation, then you don't have to worry about translating it to other languages. Most likely it's going to be very efficient in whatever language a browser can translate.
By the way, that's exactly kind of what we're going for right now. People ask us, can we volunteer translating your language? I'm the hard part is not the first step. The hard part is the maintenance of it. Anytime we change it in English, Then we got to change it in, 2 or 3 other languages.
Yeah.
Cool. By the way, what's their name one more time? Just plug their Twitter.
Oh, Rachel Lee Neighbors. They're awesome. Just to add to that, I don't know if you've seen that it became very popular, the My First PR thing on Twitter lately.
Yeah, I saw that. That inspired our question of the week, by the way. We just did a question of the week that was like, that was very heavily influenced by that.
Yeah, I checked mine, and my first pull request was a translation of Apidica. They actually closed it because they have like a whole like system for translations. And I was like, oh, okay, like I think it's one of the best like first pull requests. Like people are very up to like jumping into it, and it reduces imposter syndrome because it's your language. So a lot of new developers, especially those who are doing their first pull request, feel a lot of pressure of submitting their first pull request because like someone technical is going to review my pull request, is going to judge it, is going to see it. And if it's one of these like major open source projects, like probably someone prominent will look at it and they will judge me from doing that. So translations normally are a very low lift to make that first contribution. And a lot of people feel safer of doing that.
Heck yeah. By the way, I think I haven't done I should have used that. What is it? Firstpr.me. Let me just do this live real quickly. All right. Sunny Num Num. www.firstpr.me. So let me try that live. I actually don't even know my first PR. I looked it up on the green charts, but I couldn't.
Yeah.
Whoa. Wow, that's crazy. I just got mine.
What was it?
It was so this was 9 years ago. It was an app called IMMI. IMMI. It's an Android. Jeez, this is crazy. It's for a college class. Damn, I haven't heard that. I haven't seen Ferris, this is my teammate's name in college. I haven't seen that name in so long, but that's wild. Yeah. Oh, that's a cool site.
I think a lot of people are talking with folks from the past thanks to firstpr.me. So like, oh yeah, we had like this hackathon project together thanks to XYZ for like all of these.
Wow. Yeah, I got to reach out to him on LinkedIn. I think he's in Cleveland now. He's a software engineer now based in Cleveland. So I gotta reach out to him over LinkedIn just to say, what's up. I think this is a great segue into GitHub Education, GitHub. So you talked about, you joined the team full time. For the folks, all the Codédex learners, what is GitHub Education? Do you just want to share a little bit of story about it? And actually, even before you get there, I like to share, I don't think I've told you this, my story of GitHub Education. So I was at Codecamp this around six years ago. And we heard that there's a new team that started at GitHub called the GitHub EDU team. It was tiny at the time. I think that y'all made a landing page and it was very bare boned. And we're like, what the heck is this? This is not going to take off. It's, like this, you can't just have a separate team, a little sidearm, doing education. But, who knew? 2024, GitHub Education is almost, when I go to hackathons, you see so many students using, have access to GitHub Student Developer Pack and things like that. So I just want to say kudos. But do you want to share your story and history about the team?
Sure. So I was not in the initial team, though. I didn't know them. I think this was the story of like GitHub Education is very fun because it was as far as I remember, it was a branch from like DevRel from GitHub at the time where if you think about like GitHub, a vast majority of its users, like a considerable percentage of users are students or learners or people getting into code or people transitioning their careers. And I believe that, I believe that a lot of GitHub users still like identify as a learner in some sort of way. And the reason why GitHub Education was born was, first of all, because it's a very considerable part of the audience, but it's also because like GitHub is such an important part of tech right now. If you think about it, we are one of the platforms where a lot of open source is created and is developed and is maintained. And there are a lot of barriers of entry for folks who are getting started into coding. From I don't have the right mentors close to me to I don't have a credit card to pay for these learning resources. And as we kind of like started, as GitHub started to grow and get to more places, it was very clear that the impact that GitHub was having on education was kind of like important. And we wanted to make sure that in one way or another, GitHub Education, there was something on GitHub that was able to support the next generation of developers. And the two ways that we think about this is by creating programs and creating kind of like projects that might be valuable for you. So we have like the student developer pack, as you mentioned. Well, we have Campus Experts, are students that are building communities on their campus. We have Community Exchange as a project. But we also learned that a big barrier of entry was access to any type of formal financial institution. So some students might not have access to debit or credit card, or just like not interested on, or kind of like culturally is not a thing. So through the student developer pack, the idea is that any student would be able to experiment and learn and build and share what they are kind of like working on, so that they can get an opportunity and become better developers before they graduate. So the whole goal of GitHub Education is not in an immediate way, but rather is like thinking of the developer ecosystem in like 3 or 4 years, and then planning on where we think that the developer ecosystem can go next. And also working with like local individuals like Campus Experts to make assessments on like where their communities are at and where do they want them to be, so that it's not GitHub making the decision, but it's rather someone that is a local expert about their community and understand the context, making those decisions and helping kind of like direct those communities into the things that they find will be the most impactful.
How many Campus Experts is part of GitHub, and how many students do you think have, I don't know if you're allowed to share this number, have access to the student developer pack?
I don't remember the exact number for like both, but Campus Experts, we have around 150. Ideally, we want to keep it very low number, and this is by design. It's something we call a high touch program, which means it's not kind of like a bot that is making everything and interacting with the student, but it's rather like me or someone from my team kind of like working with them. So humans are not as scalable. And then the students with the student developer pack, I think maybe over 4 million students have the student developer pack. It's a big audience.
By the way, I think your story about, college students don't have too much, I think that resonates a lot with me because, we just did the first PR with me 9 years ago. I was a struggling college student living on a mattress in an unfinished basement, just try to graduate, just try to stick out. I was like in my 6-year CS students. And everything I'm trying to do with Codédex is almost trying to build something that I would have used, I would have loved back in the day, that would have saved my life. And this partnership with your team is honestly like a full circle moment. I shared this on social, but truly a full circle moment for us because 1, we use GitHub every day. 2, this is absolutely something we'll love when we're going to school, right? A free resources. And this is a shameless plug. We're making Codédex completely free for 6 months for anybody with a current email address. Okay, this is part of the GitHub Student Developer Pack, so definitely get that today if you're listening. So, just want to give a quick shout out. And for the folks wondering, how the heck did we land this partnership? It was so much on Juan because I actually wrote 2 emails to your team. This is around a year ago when we were just starting out. Complete got ghosted. Never got us even a response. And then I think you reached out, we linked up over Twitter. This is around a few months ago. And then you introduced me to Morgan, the head of partnerships, and that sort of kicked out everything.
I remember I was just like, Sonny, this Codédex thing is really cool. Congrats on it.
Right. No, appreciate it. So it's honestly a dream come true. I think our team, how you were saying earlier when, is this real? Am I good enough for it? Our team was definitely going through that this week. We're like, whoa, is this real? And we're going to have a dinner tomorrow night to celebrate this because you're blasting us in an email to 1 million people tomorrow. So just want to, do a quick dinner with the team to celebrate this moment. So
awesome.
All right. I actually have a lot more questions. So how big is the GitHub team? And also how big is the GitHub education team?
I think right now we're about like 20 to 20. No, it's a little bit more. Like, let's say like 26 people. We recently hired a few folks, which I'm really excited about. And so we have like different parts of the team. We have like a programs team, which is like the work that I do and what we do, for example, with campuses, with institutions, with teachers and all of that. It's just kind of like more like front-facing, making sure there's something there for folks. And then we have the product team, which is like people running things like the student developer pack, like needs a verification system. And you would be surprised by how complex identifying student is. Like the broad diversity of like schools IDs, school emails, and everything is very complex. So we have an engineering team just on that. And then a huge shout out to Scott Saneke, who has been like leading that for like multiple years now.
Carrying, just.
And then we have things like GitHub Classroom as well, which helps kind of like distribute and review assignments on GitHub, and Global Campus, which is kind of like the main like education.github.com website. So it's a big team. We're doing a lot of stuff, right? Like when you think about like education audience and then the number of students that are in the platform and everything, like we're kind of like serving a massive audience there from the education side.
And GitHub Student Developer Pack. This is the one that Codédex joined. Do you want to share with the listeners what is it, and also why should a college student apply for it?
Yeah, so the Student Developer Pack is in essence like a toolbox with all of the tools that you might need to set up any kind of project, learn any kind of thing that you're trying to learn. So when we think about it is that, as we were talking before, like there are a lot of barriers for folks to get started in coding. And we just want to make sure that experimenting with technology shouldn't be something that you pay for. Especially if you're a student, like you should have a lot of freedom to take whatever type of like technology and being able to test it out and see if something that you're interested on. This helps not only kind of like for you to learn new things, but it helps you to explore what you can do once you graduate. And what we've done with the Student Developer Pack is that we partner with a lot of these companies to make sure that we can offer free resources for students. And that goes both in products like, I don't know, 1Password or DigitalOcean or Typeform or any type of like company there that offers a product, but it also offers like resources like Codédex and other learning platforms as well. So the idea is you have like both like learning resources, and you also have like the products that you can use so that whatever you're kind of like building either at the hackathon or you're trying to build for your personal project, you can build it with any of the tools that we have on the Student Developer Pack. And we have also added kind of like, there's so many tools that sometimes it's hard to navigate through it. So we added the experience component, which is like if you're trying to do something in a specific, you can take one of the experiences and you have like both a little bit of guidance and which tools you can use to build a project.
It's almost like a starter pack for college students, right? I would have loved this. And I think one of our creators, Eric, who we just partnered with, he shared that if you put everything together, everything that GitHub Student Developer Pack got to offer, it's over $4,000 worth of value.
Yeah, it's around like $100,000 in value. So
okay, never mind.
A little bit higher.
Okay. So definitely take advantage of that.
Yeah.
All right.
I think the thing that I hear the most about the Student Developer Pack is folks being like, I wish I have used it more when I was a student. Like,
right.
It's until you lose access to it that you're like, oh, I had so many resources for free and I didn't take advantage of all of them.
All right, cool. And that was GitHub. Let's move on to the next segment. So Microsoft came out with a bang during the Super Bowl with an AI ad. Okay. And for folks that don't know, Microsoft acquired GitHub a couple years ago. And you've also sent me an AI paper teaching AI with CS50. So I know this is probably top of mind for you and your team. What's your view on AI education? What's the viewpoint? Like, what's like the vibes like in terms of AI in the GitHub Slack or whatever? Or is it, do you all use Microsoft Team?
No, we don't. Luckily enough,
you don't use it? Okay.
We were able to keep Slack. We have a few folks from Microsoft just like using our Slack as a way to kind of like use the technology. I don't know, just like a place there, an oasis there to use something different.
Okay, but what's like the vibes like? You know, are things shifting on the GitHub side with just pivoting towards a new direction?
I was as surprised as you with the Super Bowl ad. I was not expecting it, and then I was watching it with friends, and I was like, a little bit scared because I was like, are we really kind of like ready for these? Like, are we at a point where we feel confident that this is the thing? I have been kind of like taking some time in the past few months to study more about what's going to be the impact of AI in education, especially because we have GitHub Copilot, one of the most used developer AI tools in the world. And there has been all sorts of different comments around it, from like, it is beneficial for students. It is kind of like teachers are a little bit scared. I think at the beginning, if you think about it, like teachers and institutions were really scared about like ChatGPT, and even like the Italian government banned the service from the country on concerns about like risk assessment. And I'm conditionally optimistic on the use of AI in education. I believe there are a few great papers that have come out, like the CS50 rubber duck, I think is a great example of how can you use AI as a tutoring system for kind of frequently asked questions and personalized education in a very initial way. I think I'm concerned about the use of data. How are people implementing AI in education? Folks being over reliant on the tool as well. So I'm optimistic that if done correctly, it's going to be awesome. I believe we need to be a little bit of putting some conditions there in order to avoid this from doing more harm than benefit.
Totally. And for the folks that's listening, the rubber duck that Juan just mentioned, by the way, the whole Codédex curriculum team actually read this paper for our internal book club, the Teaching CS50 with OpenAI, not with OpenAI, with Teaching AI with CS50. I think that's what the paper is called. But the rubber duck is a bot that's used as a chat bot, also used as a forum bot, and also used as a third way. I think it's like a styling bot. Okay, and it's pretty cool. We actually took some learnings from it where there's like user threshold throttling. There's like a gamification with a heart system to prevent spamming. So like, after you ask a question for the rubber duck, it drops a heart. And then after like a certain time amount, you regain a heart. This is to prevent spamming, and because I think it's built on top of OpenAI. So we're actually going to implement something kind of similar. So great paper. And I totally agree with you, Juan. I just saw a LinkedIn post on this. Some product manager flagged this. Usually when you release a product feature, it's either opt-in or opt-out. Okay, opt-in means you ask the user, hey, do you want to use this? And the user sort of get access to it. Opt-out is you ask the user, hey, by default you have access to this, but do you want to quit? And for a lot of AI features, for example, like we last time we met was over Zoom. There's like an AI subscribe tool. There is actually really hard to opt out. Like you can't even find in the settings. You just kind of like get the access to this feature, and you're like, okay, wait, but how do I not let Zoom get my data? It's still very much like the Wild West, but hopefully in the next few months, more safety features, privacy features will be introduced. So totally.
Yeah. We get the same comments from GitHub Copilot where it's like people are coding and then the autocomplete jumps in and does like the entire function for you. And they're like, Copilot, like, stop. I want to code this thing myself. Yeah. Like, I want to do it.
Right. Like, chill.
Yeah.
So I think, there needs to be more standards set around that. And I think it's coming. But what about GitHub in general? Like, are there more, any secret projects or, besides like Copilot 2.0 or I don't know, what are y'all working on? What are y'all cooking?
So there's a lot going on right now, especially for education. We are starting more research on the impact of GitHub Copilot on CS education. So we're working with a couple of universities there to provide them with resources to help us kind of like understand better how this is going on the current like CS curricula. I do see we have a few tools coming out. Copilot has like this thing called Copilot X, which is kind of like the suite of AI tools. So we have things like Copilot for pull requests. So if you don't want to put the description on your pull request, you can add these. Copilot for CLI is coming up soon. It's on technical preview right now so that you can use it on your CLI and be more effective with your you can write like, hey, do a commit and add this message and it will do it for you. And as far as I'm aware of, I think those are kind of like the two next projects that we have coming. There's also like GitHub Copilot coming up to the platform as a whole so that you can ask specific questions to repositories so that you can kind of like learn how to implement it or understand better how they're doing stuff. So there's a lot of integration of AI, especially for the education side. A lot of the work we're doing is working with researchers and understanding better how people are doing. And we have like some really cool people on that. We're also creating kind of like best practices, and we're working with Teach AI on that and kind of like they are leading the efforts, and they're kind of like understanding what are some of the best practices as well, and working with them.
And what is Teach AI?
Teach AI, I don't know the formal like description, but it's in essence an organization out of code.org that is creating relevant assets and relevant kind of like between like content and bringing people together and having discussions on how AI is affecting like education as a whole. And they work with, I think, like 50 companies and I don't know how many governments. So there's two sides right now that we are involved with them. One of them is the impact of AI in CS education and helping with policymaking and providing resources to policymakers on how can they approach AI while creating new laws.
Yeah, if you have more research on that, like updates on that, please share over Discord.
Yeah, no, definitely.
We introduced a few AI bots at Codédex, and I think one of them has been used massively that we might have to limit because our bill with OpenAI is going, I think it's over $800 a month now. We're trying to limit a little bit, maybe make it Codédex Club feature, like unlimited, maybe for free users. We use CS50s, usage throttling or whatever to some gamification around that. But we're also big believers. I don't know if you know, when I came to New York, I was actually a PhD candidate. I came here for grad school. And my research was actually in machine learning, computer vision, and AI. But I dropped out after a year and a half. This was 2015. Yeah, it's cool to see like another wave of AI with, do you remember OpenAI back in the day?
Oh my God.
When they were a Dota team?
Yeah. No, it has changed a lot.
It has changed so much. OpenAI was actually one of the top companies I was looking at around 2017, 2016. When they first started, they were building an AI Dota team. It's a video game, Dota 2. It's like a MOBA game, okay? And I actually flew to Vancouver to watch a tournament live. It's called TI, the International. This is nerd stuff. And OpenAI back in the day, this is like 2017 or something, like they played a professional tier 1 esports team and they won. And that was when we were like, oh my God, this is about to get crazy. But people were talking about DeepMind, like Google, AlphaGo at the time, but like OpenAI they were cooking. So it was really cool to see.
It's interesting how it has changed, right? Like it was very kind of like research based, and now they have like they were like research, and now they feel more like a startup.
Exactly. But we actually need to update our GPT-4 model too. I think they have Turbo or something. So you've been to so many hackathons, right? High school, college, and in your current role. And I'm sure you meet hundreds and thousands of students every year. So you're very in tune with the pulses of the Gen Z CS students. And there are a few questions that we wrote down. One, for the whole community, do you think students should do open source projects and put them on resume? Is this something that's worth doing outside of school? Or do you think this could be delayed a little bit later post-grad?
I've seen a lot of Twitter heat lately on this topic. And I think, yes, it is good to have open source. I think it's good to upload your school projects as well. Even if they're not like super clean, definitely having there some of the projects that you have built helps a lot. I think especially for students, show some of the projects that you feel the most proud of. Some of the projects that you think are really cool, even if they're like from your school, because it really helps. We've seen lately more hiring managers jumping into your GitHub profile just to see kind of like what you've been working on, and having some projects there open is great. That being said, if you want to do like open source project, like contributing to open source, totally good to make it. I think it's good, but my recommendation is that join an open source project, not just like contribute to it. And what I mean by that is like really get involved in the community or in the project, spend some time getting to know more about it so that you're able to understand the way to contribute, and so that the contribution that you make is meaningful. It's not just like something more transactional to demonstrate that you have done a contribution and get the street cred of like contributing to a project, but rather find ways in which you can little by little contribute to a project and get more involved with it.
And as a program manager, when you're hiring, by the way, do you hire students on your team outside of campus experts?
We don't have like internship projects or programs right now. So unfortunately, I don't hire like students right now.
Okay. But are you hiring in general or are you a hiring manager?
Yeah. So most of the hirings that I do are for kind of like community/programs roles.
Gotcha.
And a lot of what I'm looking forward when I get an applicant is learning of if they have like work in any developer community in the past, like what has been their role on that. And especially what I take very seriously is a metric that we call community health, which is how, as a community manager or a program manager, do you make sure that your community or your program is healthy? And this is a talk that I'm giving in Slovakia by like June. So I'll give the answers there. But essentially what we've learned is that there's like 4 different components of making sure that communities are healthy. Like, are people feeling like they're respected in the community? Do they feel they're contributing? Are they growing in this community? And we developed a few questions on how to measure each of these items so that you're able to kind of like track down how the community is doing. It is a little bit hard, but because it's a lot of, as a community manager, it puts you on the spot on like how you're doing, right? When I'm hiring, I'm kind of like trying to learn what are kind of like the values that you have. What's your previous experience? What do you think about developer communities? Like, do you see them as like marketing? Do you see them as a great way to meet new people? Like, what is the thing that you have or what's your thing with communities? And especially, I think like you really can see who has a genuine interest on like developer communities, especially for the education team. We're looking for people who want to make sure that we're able to scale and grow and support folks in multiple countries by giving them access to all of these resources, but also that these communities are helping others grow. So how are you kind of like achieving that these people get to where they want with their careers?
By the way, I think community teams, traditionally, it's always hard to put them into, within an organization. And a lot of teams I worked at, they're product prog teams, they're under marketing team. At Codédex, we just decided community is one of our 4 pillars. Learn, practice, build, and the community supports everything underneath. So community team is its own separate team because it's so core to what we do at Codédex. But it's still very hard to track Discord metrics, engagement metrics, retention metrics with the Discord. It's almost like a long-term play, right? So
GitHub follows the same principle, though. We had like a chief community manager, almost like a VP of communities reporting to Thomas. Now it's moved on their product, but it's still very high on like the traditional kind of like company structure. Like it's something seriously for the GitHub org.
All right, we got a few questions from the community. Let's start with this one from Milan, MIAN. Does GitHub have any competitors in the market? And also, what is GitHub's market?
So we do have three major competitors. There's from open source, like versions of platforms that host like Git repositories to closed versions as well. So we do have a few competitors. What is GitHub market? Professional developers or just like any developer, even like learners. So we have a broad view of who can be like a GitHub user. So yeah, anyone that is either like learning how to code into like people that have been coding for years, they can be, they join GitHub.
And then from Valentine L, looking ahead, what are some of the upcoming features or initiatives from GitHub EDU that students and teachers should be excited about?
So there's a few new partners joining the Student Developer Pack. I think we have one like every month for the next few months. So I would highly encourage to take a look into the Student Developer Pack or subscribe to the newsletter. I think you do it automatically when you join the pack. So you get to know who are our next partners.
And one last question from an Instagram user. GitHub Field Day is coming up. What is it and why is it something that I should join?
Yeah. So GitHub Field Day is an unconference for student community leaders where we bring you all together to have discussions about how you're building communities, some of the challenges that you're facing, and how can you work together to build better communities in a specific like region or country or city. We have our next field day in March the 15th in New York City. We have around like 80 spots available. So if you're building a community, getting started to it, or you want to meet some other people who are doing amazing work, I would highly recommend to apply. Go as soon as possible. And the entrance is completely for free. And we have some great speakers. John Gottfried from MLH is going to be there. So don't miss the opportunity to join other community leaders.
Cool. Well, Juan, thank you so much for having us. I'm looking forward to grabbing coffee with you next month.
Yeah, thank you for having me in the podcast.